Hi everybody, welcome back for another video. Today I'm going to talk about why do you choose less lethal, and when you do choose less lethal, what is your rationale for doing so? Are you doing it for the right reasons, or are you doing it for reasons which are maybe less well defined and less clear? Obviously, we're all familiar with less lethal. We want to reduce the amount of harm. We're all conscientious people who want to minimize harm to others, while at the same time maintain our own personal safety. And so the question is, though, when you choose to use less lethal, maybe you live in a jurisdiction where they're really tough on the person who is protecting themselves, and they're really lenient on the criminal, and you're just afraid of the consequences of what happens if you killed someone in self-defense. Now, the reality is, if you have a firearm and you're carrying a firearm, you should only be using that in a true lethal life and death situation. So that concern should not be something that you have a problem with. Now, of course, you can have some legal protection, and you should have, if you're going to carry a firearm with you out of the home, and you're going to be using it on the street, and you're going to have it, and it's going to be there, and you ever in a case where you need it, then you do need to be able to defend yourself and save your life and save your livelihood, because you had to use that to protect yourself. But that's certainly really important. But you have to make the decision far before that. Why do I want to carry a firearm, and why do I want to choose? Some people choose to just forego a firearm and say, I'm all in for a less lethal. I don't want to kill someone. I never could live with that, and I don't want to deal with that situation. But the reality is, the only time that you would ever be doing that is if you were literally at the point of being killed and you had to defend your life. So if you frame that and you prepare yourself and you're trained, you will realize that you will not use your firearm in the wrong case, and so you shouldn't have to live with that guilt. Now, the fact that you may be prosecuted for using your firearm and killing someone, that could happen whether it's a firearm or it's a less lethal. It just depends on the situation. And do you want to err on the side of using a less lethal because you have fear of prosecution? That's a very valid concern that people have, and I certainly have a moderate amount of fear of prosecution, that if I use a firearm, I might be prosecuted much more severely than if I have a less lethal. And so the less lethal affords a significant lowering of the anxiety, and gives you a bit more room to maneuver legally. But having the option to be able to force escalate is something that, my life is actually fairly safe day to day. I don't feel in threat of my life. I don't feel I'm in very unsafe areas. But if you do, and your job requires you to go in unsafe areas, or you live in a place where it's just a known threat, and you live in that environment and you have to protect yourself, by all means you should do that. I am sort of in between. I carry less lethals because I feel, for me, at the risk-benefit ratio and the assessment is that less lethals more than likely will be sufficient for me in most every situation, and I'm willing to take that risk that they might not be in certain situations. But of course, if you're traveling, going to areas which are not places where you live, not safe areas that you know really well, and you're exposing yourself to variables and unknowns, having that backup is really important. But don't make the mistake of just foregoing the carrying of lethal force across the board and say, I'm just not going to do it because I'm afraid of the consequences, because that could cost you. So you have to find the right balance for you mentally to navigate that, and also then consider the carry. I'm going to show you two examples here of carrying a less lethal or a firearm-sized object, and then how will you actually physically carry? Are you a big guy that wears big, heavy, baggy clothes, or do you, like me, where you prefer to wear shorts and t-shirts, and you work out and you want to take care of yourself, and you don't want to be just wearing big, baggy stuff all the time and look like a hobo? You want to actually dress properly. So that becomes almost impossible to carry even a full-size firearm, much less a less lethal, on you. And I'll show you how it looks on me and how I handle it, and then we'll come back and wrap up. So this is the difficulties in carrying a full-size firearm or a less lethal that is a full size. You can see the printing here. There's really no way around it unless you're really wearing big bulky clothes. It's hard to hide. I mean, you have to really have on a lot of stuff. If you're just a t-shirt weather like I am here, that's going to be, it's really hard to not see the end of the grip. And one of the things that I think helps conceal it better is a thinner firearm. So the double stack are a little bit bulkier, and they're going to print a little bit better. If this is a little thinner, this is my Glock 17 Gen 5 T4E, so I'm using that as just an example. But you can see if it was a thinner version of this or a smaller firearm with less of a grip, you'd be able to get it down in there a little bit deeper and conceal it. Now you can go around like this and you can hide it, but there are times when it's going to be obvious. And so this is a full-size firearm, the Glock 17. So this, yeah, you could carry it, but I find it's not particularly comfortable to have something of this size on your body. And so in comparison, if we take that and we compare that to a TCP, for example, so let me grab my TCP. The TCP is this big, and the Glock is this big. So there's definitely a difference. Now I could make the barrel a lot less long, but to carry this on body, that's just impossible. You're not going to be able to do that. I don't even have a holster for it because in reality, unless you're wearing it on your hip and you want to just have this on your hip and you want to go around like this, this is not concealable on body. This one, there are definitely people that with the right clothing who can carry a full-size firearm on their body or a full-size launcher that might be this big, maybe like a Byrna or maybe like a T4E, and you can keep that. This is borderline as far as I'm concerned. So any future launcher, less lethal launcher that is developed that is going to be of any great value for EDC carry needs to be less bulky, less thick than this one. And if you just compare the width here, already the TCP is significantly thicker than the Glock T4E. So again, neither of these are firearms. They're both less lethal launchers. This is a training tool. This is actual self-defense tool. But you can see the dimensions of what you really want to get to. This is like the best power that you can get for the moderate amount of size. This is weak power, but it's a size that is actually much more manageable. But the real difficulty is you really need something that is more like a subcompact version of this that has the power of this. That is the conundrum that I think exists in the less lethal community right now, is trying to find that balance. So when you make your big decision, am I going to commit to less lethal or am I going to go with a firearm? Because a firearm, you can get one that is subcompact, 9mm, even smaller than this, the Glock 26, the Glock 43X. I love those options. And those are kind of things you can carry, and you can go with 9mm. Other full size, it's much more of a challenge to carry. So let's talk about this a little more, because I think there's just a big decision that you have to make, and you have to decide, why am I going with the less lethal? Do I have a strong enough rationale for using it? All right, folks. So at the end of the day, I guess my take-home message to you is, if you're going to be using less lethal and you're foregoing a firearm because you're just not into that, you're just not willing to take on that risk and responsibility, just make sure that you're not overconfident in your ability to use the less lethal in certain situations, and that you know your limits and you know when and when not to try to use it, because it definitely has limitations, especially if you're going to try to carry on body. There's going to be specific limitations that you're going to have to deal with. And a lot of times, if you can't carry something because it's too big, you won't carry it. You'll leave it at home, and then you'll end up not only with no less lethal, but you'll have nothing on you. So at the very least, have a pepper spray and go through your less lethal carry options and make sure that you have a plan for how you will carry it regularly. And just realize that they're going to be bigger, they're going to be bulkier, and you're going to have to deal with that. That's part of your process and a part of how you make your decisions going forward. So we're going to leave it at that. I hope this was an informative discussion, and we'll see everybody in the next one.